Now we have the opportunity to tell a new Indiana Jones story for a modern gaming audience. For a modern gaming audience. For a modern gaming audience. For a modern gaming audience.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer? Every night, I can feel my leg and my arm, even my fingers. The body I've lost. The comrades I've lost won't stop hurting. It's like they're all still there. You feel it too, don't you? I'm gonna make them give back our past.
Also take a very movie-like approach to things like cinematics. This help us bridge the gap between making a game and making a movie.
Where we have once again combined high fidelity and immersive presentation with a shorter, narrative-led experience that focuses on the things that we really care about and that we hope you care about too.
For a modern gaming audience.
For a modern gaming audience, the words that I think best summarize this absolute total failure of an Xbox 2024 developer direct, because from start to finish, man, this was mind-numbingly boring to sit through. I think we got more footage of the developers in their office space than actual video games when it came to whatever game they were talking about. It was a complete and total waste of my time and probably your time as well if you feel similar to me. And overall, this has to be the worst showing that Xbox has had, and easily one of the most boring showcases from either Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony that we have ever seen in the history of console gaming, because this shit was not it, dude. Honestly, I think this in a lot of cases did a lot more harm than good for my anticipation or interest in any of the games that Microsoft has coming up in their first-party pipeline. But overall, man, I cannot stress enough, my non-existent expectations still left me disappointed, because this shit was fucking horrible. I don't even care if you like the content that they showed off in terms of the games in this showcase. You have to admit, the pacing of the show was fucking miserable to sit through, dude. Whoever directed and put this together needs to get fired right now, because this shit ain't it, man. This was absolutely terrible from start to finish, and 45 minutes felt like 3 hours. I mean, this makes Jeff Keighley's Game Awards show feel like a flash in the pan type event. Like, that made the Game Awards seem like they have good pacing, and that is definitely an accomplishment.
All right, awesome. Thanks, nigga. All right.
I don't know what the fuck happened, because Microsoft in recent memory has actually had pretty good showcases from a pacing perspective. You can argue over the content itself, but from a pacing and presentation perspective, they've actually been killing it lately. But I don't know what the fuck this step backwards was, but it was definitely a noticeable one, and overall, it left a massive sour taste in my mouth just from the pacing perspective alone. That's not even to mention the content that they showed off being completely underwhelming, and just overall more of the same from Microsoft's subpar first-party offering. So let's go ahead and kick this off with the first game showed off at this showcase, which was Avowed, which is easily the game I'm the most interested in from Microsoft's first-party lineup, or at least I was, until we saw the gameplay slash presentation we got today. But when it comes to Avowed, dude, I don't know if it's just me, but this game just looked incredibly bad. Like, originally when they showed this game off, it actually looked pretty interesting to me. I was hoping it was basically going to be a Skyrim clone from Obsidian, which, looking at the gameplay we got today, you can definitely see the Skyrim influence, but I don't know, maybe it's just me, but did that game to anyone else look like a VR title minus the VR? Like, it literally looked like the type of game that you would boot up if you got a brand new Oculus Rift or something like that. Like, this game just looks really off to me. I don't know if it's the coloring, the art style, the fact that the AI is completely non-responsive in combat scenarios and just literally sits there waiting for you to hit them first. It's just, there's something really odd about the way this game looks. It just screams to me a VR game that was originally slated to come out for a VR headset, but they decided to scrap that that and just release the game to like normal consoles and gaming PCs instead and get rid of all the VR features. Like, I don't know if it's just me. A couple other people in my chat felt kind of the same way when we were watching this live, but overall, man, something really seems off about Avowed. The gameplay just looks really airy and non-impactful. It doesn't look like there's any weight behind the combat whatsoever. There's nothing really flashy or gory or bloody about it. It just looks really tame and bland, in all honesty. Like, Skyrim from 13 years ago looks like it has better combat and physics effects than this game does in 2024, which is not really a promising sight, if you ask me, considering the size and track record of Obsidian in the video game industry. This is not some studio that's putting out their first attempt at a game, so you can excuse the rough edges. This is a full-fledged AAA gaming studio with decades worth of work and experience within the industry. So Avowed to me was a massive disappointment. I think the first time they showed off gameplay last year was actually way more impressive than what we saw today, and in all honesty, I think my excitement and interest in this game has gone down dramatically after what was showcased today. I know a lot of people are excited for this, but overall, man, I gotta say I was very disappointed with what I saw. I was definitely hoping that it was gonna kind of toe the line between just being an Elder Scrolls clone, but it looks like they're taking it in its own direction. The combat, again, did not look good to me. The dialogue was extremely cringe when it came to like actually interacting with the NPCs in the world, and overall, I immediately just wanted to kill everyone that they showed off. So hopefully, because it's an Obsidian game, that gameplay option will be there. But at this point, Avowed is a game that I am very, I guess, cautiously optimistic about at best. And in all honesty, I don't really want to even get excited for this game until I have a chance to play it, because something just seems really off about it, and I can't really put my finger on it. But I think a VR game without the VR aspect is the best way I can sum up the overall way I felt about how Avowed looked when they showed it off today. And maybe it's just me, maybe I'm crazy, but I do not think this was a good showcase for that game whatsoever. And the first time they showed it last year, in terms of like actual gameplay, it actually looked a hell of a lot better in my personal opinion. But hey, maybe that's just me, maybe you're excited for it, but overall, not a very strong start. And on top of that, why the fuck did they spend so much time talking about it? Just show like an uncut gameplay segment of the game. Like, why are developers so against just showing like 5 to 10 minutes of actual uncut raw gameplay? Oh, it's because they try to purposely deceive you to the true nature of the game, because they don't want you to see what it actually looks and plays like until it already comes out and you've already purchased it. So it's very irritating. That's a very common trend in the video game industry. It's not just an Avowed problem, but you know, less talking, more actual gameplay, or at the very least, show us an uncut gameplay segment and let the developer commentate over top of the footage, explaining what's happening, explaining the gameplay mechanics and everything that's working behind the scenes. I think that's the way to do gameplay demonstrations. This to me was incredibly boring to sit through and did not really present me with a very positive perspective on this game moving forward. But moving on to the next game, and probably the game I hated the most at this entire showcase, and pretty much everything this game represents in the current modern gaming landscape, and I think it truly does summarize the phrase for modern audiences better than anything else.
To a modern gaming audience.
And that, of course, is Hellblade 2. Now, if you watched me play through the original Hellblade, you would know how much I absolutely fucking despise that game. Hellblade, in my mind, is everything wrong with the modern AAA gaming industry. It's all about graphics, cinematics, dialogue, with zero fucking substance whatsoever when it comes to the actual gameplay. I cannot stand these type of narrative, walking simulator, story-first experiences that prioritize literally everything else except what makes a video game, and that is the gameplay. And let me just make this very fucking clear, Xbox fanboys out there. If any of you motherfuckers have ever been caught or on record talking shit about Sony's first-party games, saying that they're walking simulators, they're movie games, they're 2 on rails, rails. There are more cutscenes than actual gameplay. If you motherfuckers are now in turn hyping up Hellblade 2, you are the biggest piece of shit hypocrites on planet Earth, because this game and this franchise is a million times worse than anything Sony has released in terms of a movie game. I would even say Detroit Become Human is more of a fucking video game than this slop-ass Hellblade series that literally is complete garbage and misery porn from beginning to end. This is a journalist-style game where they can sit there and self-loathe about how miserable they are as they relate to a mentally ill schizophrenic in a video game. Like, I cannot stand this franchise. I played through the first game in one sitting. It is some of the most miserable 5 hours I have ever spent playing a game, and this game looks to be exactly the same thing, only back with a bigger vengeance, and I could not have any less interest in this absolute dog shit, pathetic excuse for a video game that is Hellblade 2. Avoid this shit like the fucking plague. No one really bought the first game until they started dropping the price to $5, and even if you got this shit for free $99, I still think you're getting ripped off because you're wasting your precious time that is so limited in this world. So overall, man, I cannot say enough negative shit about Hellblade as a franchise. Avoid this shit like the fucking plague. This game is everything wrong with the modern video game landscape, and on top of that, it is an absolute shame and just overall complete injustice that the studio behind Heavenly Sword and that actually very fun to play gameplay wise Devil May Cry reboot, which, you know, say what you will about the storyline, but the actual gameplay itself was very solid, that the talent at that studio is being completely wasted on the furthest thing from a video game you could ever fucking make, and that is literally a walking simulator movie game, worse than any of Sony's worst offenders. So overall, if you're caught hyping this shit up in front of me and you have ever talked shit about a PlayStation game being too cinematic or too much like a movie, you better sit the fuck down because you have no idea how stupid you look. But overall, man, this game is all style, no substance, and I want absolutely nothing to do with it. The fact that it was even shown makes me happy because we finally have a release date, because this game's gonna come out, people are gonna play this shit for a few days at most, they're gonna forget about it the next week, and luckily we probably won't have to hear about it whatsoever until the Game Awards roll around at the end of the year. So I'm just ready for this game to come out so I don't have to hear shit about it anymore, man. That's the point I'm at. I absolutely hated the first Hellblade game, and this game looks like it's gonna be just that, if not even worse. So, you know, go ahead and release into the wild so people can move on from this junk and I don't have to look at it ever again. But moving on to the next game and the big surprise of the showcase, which was a previously announced Square Enix title that we saw a month ago at the Game Awards.
All right, awesome. Thanks, nigga. All right.
You know, Microsoft always bringing in those banger third-party announcements. Now, it was speculated that this could be Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy 16, an early beta announcement for Final Fantasy 14 on Xbox. Nope, it's a C-tier franchise from Square Enix coming to the Xbox platform that was announced to be releasing a month ago, so it's not even really a surprise or announcement or really anything of interest whatsoever, but they felt the need to spend like 10 minutes on this game in some of the most boring segments of this entire presentation. When I initially saw this game at the Game Awards, I had a little bit of interest in it. It was something that I might have considered buying for my Switch and playing like in handheld every once in a while, but now that they did like this deep dive on the gameplay, I have to admit this game looks incredibly mediocre and I don't really have any sort of interest in it whatsoever. So again, perfect example of this showcase doing more harm than good. Now, that could also be the fact that this entire presentation, which they were showing the game off, was absolutely miserable to sit through and boring from start to finish. So maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, but overall, man, this was not a good showing whatsoever. I don't know why they spent this much time on a game that was already previously announced, and they're hyping this shit up like they're getting a brand new exclusive Final Fantasy or something, when this is literally one of Square Enix's most minor titles in their entire portfolio. So I understand Xbox doesn't get Japanese support, but dude, this was not that big of a deal, and they acted like this was the second coming of Christ with how much time and attention was spent on this game in particular, which I don't really understand whatsoever. I don't really know why at a developer direct, which is supposed to be specifically focused on Microsoft's first party lineup, up. There's a third-party dev, you know, promoting a multi-platform title. It was very odd to me. I don't really know why they spent this much time on it, and overall, the presentation did not, I think, help sell anyone on this title whatsoever. Now, is it cool that Microsoft is getting more, I guess, Japanese games on the Xbox? Yes, because I'm one of the few people who actually buy Japanese games on the Xbox. Because typically what happens is Microsoft will partner with a company like Square Enix. They'll release a bunch of JRPGs on the Xbox. No one will buy them, and then people will surprise Pikachu face in wondering why the next Final Fantasy or whatever Square Enix title is releasing isn't coming to the Xbox on day one. Well, it's because nobody bought the game on their platform. Like, prime example, Final Fantasy 15 sold 7-1 on the PlayStation 4 versus the Xbox One. So there you have it. I mean, I guess it's cool that we're getting more Square Enix support on Xbox. Personally, I'm all there for it. I typically will play Square Enix titles on Xbox over other platforms if they're available there, because I like to achievement hunt. But yeah, this was not the place to spend this much time on this type of game, man. Like, I don't know, maybe like keep it to 3 or 4 minutes. That could have been cool, but hearing about the design and, you know, artistic decisions behind these like little cutesy monsters and shit was not really what I tuned into a Xbox developer direct for. But anyway, I guess it's cool it's coming to Xbox. But moving on to probably the lowest point of the show, which was the Civilization clone called Ara History Untold, which this is again one of those games I really wonder why it was even there, because this game isn't even coming to Xbox for at least another year post-launch apparently. It's a PC exclusive title. It's like a Civilization style strategy game, which I understand there's a pretty big market for those, but this is not one of those games that shows well. This is a super niche, very specific type of game that doesn't really have mass appeal. It has a very dedicated, I guess, fan base in that specific subgenre, but overall, man, this was not a game they needed to spend like 12 minutes on. This is the game, I don't know, maybe Indiana Jones they spent more time on, but this game felt like the game that they spent the most time on. Now, luckily, when I was watching this on stream, my dog needed to go out and take a shit, so I didn't have to watch the entire presentation of this, but what I did see was absolutely boring. I didn't really think anything of this. This is not for me whatsoever. I understand there's a market for it, but nothing about this game looks impressive. Civilization 5 from back in like, what, 2011, I think, is when I had that on my MacBook Pro back in the day. Like, that game looks more visually impressive than this one, and this is apparently from the same development team, just at a new studio now. I don't really know the dynamics of that whole situation, but overall, I was not impressed by this whatsoever. I actually do like this genre to some degree, but nothing I saw here really enticed me or really interested me in potentially trying this out personally. So, you know, I guess it's cool if you were interested in it, but personally, this could have been completely removed from the showcase, and I think it probably would have been for the better, because this is definitely the low point. This was miserable, boring, slow. There's not really much to show off in this type of game. Like, this is one of those games that if you want to give a deep dive, that's fine, but kind of relegate it to its own kind of video or event, because this is where you're going to start losing people, because this is a hyper-specific audience that's interested in this type of game. You know, show 3 or 5 minutes or whatever, like something short, sweet, to the point, give the highlights, key details, cool. But to spend almost 15 minutes walking through this game was just downright boring, and I probably would have rather sat through probably more fucking Visions of Mana than this shit. But anyway, yeah, definitely the low point of the developer direct. But moving away from this game, because I really just don't even want to talk about it. I don't care about it whatsoever. But moving on from that, we go into obviously the highlight of the show, which is Machine Games' take on Indiana Jones. Now, this game had leaked to be called Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and everyone thought that was a filler title. Well, no, actually, that is the real title of the game. I don't know why they couldn't get a little bit more creative than the Great Circle. Like, I don't know, man. That just seems really half-assed, but you know what explains the reasoning behind that? Come to find out that Todd Howard is the executive producer on this game, so it makes sense that it already seems to be kind of half-assed in that regard, which that is not a positive thing in my mind. When they said that Todd Howard was the executive producer and kind of brainchild behind this entire game, game, especially coming off of Starfield. That set off red flags inside of my head. Now, I will say this up front, in all fairness, I think out of every game they showed here, this is the game that has the most potential, has the most interest for me, but given Bethesda's track record recently, I am not going to set myself up for disappointment. I have zero expectations. If it turns out to be good, that's great, but I have some concerns based on what I heard during that presentation. I mean, just take into account the fact, like the clip I played at the beginning of this video, this guy, or whatever he identifies as, said that this is an Indiana Jones story created for modern gaming audiences.
Now we have the opportunity to tell a new Indiana Jones story for a modern gaming audience.
And pair that with the fact that they're focusing on making this game blur the lines between a video game and a movie.
Also take a very movie-like approach to things like cinematics. This help us bridge the gap between making a game and making a movie.
Being the gameplay enjoyer that I am, that sets off immediate red flags in my mind because I am sick and tired of these cinematic movie game style video games. Now, the gameplay or very brief snippets of it that they did show off does look kind of interesting. Like I said, this game I want to be mostly positive on because I think it has the most potential out of anything and everything they've shown, but I am not setting myself up for failure considering Bethesda's track record over the past 5 years. And overall, I am going to be insanely cautiously neutral on this game until I see actual unadulterated, uncut gameplay footage or get a chance to play it for myself. Now, what they did show off graphically looks really nice. The character model for Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones looks really good. I wish they could have somehow gotten him to voice the character. Troy Baker sounds the same to me in pretty much every single role he plays. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like I'm playing as Booker DeWitt, but I'm actually playing as Indiana Jones. I would have liked if they would have gotten the actual Indiana Jones music in the game as well. I think that would have been really cool, but it seems like that will not be the case either. But overall, man, I really want to be excited about it because I like Indiana Jones a lot. I love the first 4 movies of Indiana Jones. Yes, I actually liked Crystal Skull. Fucking fight me. I didn't bother watching the new slop that Disney put out because fuck Disney. But overall, man, I just don't have a lot of faith. It seems like, you know, this is definitely going to be a non-traditional Indiana Jones story, just from the perspective that they needed to point out that this is a game made for modern gaming audiences, meaning that the typical Indiana Jones story we know and love might not be there, and it's going to be some just absolutely butchered, woke, modern take on a beloved franchise like we've seen from so many other Disney IPs over the past few years. But I don't know, I think what was shown off here was fine. It was just a trailer, so you can't really make any concrete judgments. I want to see actual gameplay of this game, not 10-second snippets put together, mixed in with cutscenes and scripted segments of the game. So overall, I think this game has some potential, but there definitely are some red flags that are going off in my head just based off of what was said in this developer direct. But overall, man, I think Indiana Jones is really the only redeeming part of this entire thing for me, and it's the only reason I'm giving this shit a 3 out of 10. Otherwise, it would be a straight up 1 out of 10, bro, because this was a complete and total waste of time from pretty much start to finish. Like, the Indiana Jones stuff could have literally just been a trailer, dude. Like, they didn't show an actual gameplay demo for pretty much anything. The game that showed the most gameplay, unironically, was the Square Enix title Visions of Mana, which is kind of funny to think about. But overall, this thing was not good. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. The pacing was absolutely horrible. I don't need to see the inside of game development studios, nor do I give a fuck about what random people working at them have to say about a video game unless they're talking over actual gameplay demos of the game so I get an idea of what it is I'm supposed to be excited about. So I think my final rating is a 3 out of 10 solely for the fact that Indiana Jones has some potential, and honestly, I don't mind the first person on that game. I don't really think it matters. I would have preferred third person, but it is what it is. I don't think it looks bad. I don't think it's going to suffer for that, but it is kind of weird that you would get Harrison Ford's character model and you barely get to look at him throughout the game unless this game is going to be super cutscene heavy, which, again, going back to that quote,
Also take a very movie-like approach to things like cinematics. This help us bridge the gap between making a game and making a movie.
seems to be a valid concern to be having. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on this Xbox Developer Direct in the comment section below. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Were you neutral on it? Did it meet or, I guess, fall below your expectations? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like on it. I would greatly appreciate it. And with that shit said, I will catch you guys next time.